Good afternoon, folks. I'm meteorologist Corey Thompson here in the TV9 newsroom with an update on the potential for severe thunderstorms as we go through the afternoon, evening of your Monday here, July 15th. Talking about this potential for a little while, giving you the first alert to it. Now we're just a few hours away from when these storms may start to develop. So let's start off where we stand in terms of our severe weather outlook at this point. Latest update from the Storm Prediction Center coming less than an hour ago was to make very little change to their outlook. Enhanced risk for severe storms still in place for the areas outlined in orange. It does include areas like Waterloo, Manchester, Dubuque, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, Washington, Mount Pleasant, and then extending east towards Chicago, even into northern Indiana. So the storms that develop will be moving from west to east generally, or maybe a little bit south of east as they progress through. Now the areas surrounding that enhanced risk in orange, highlighted in yellow, that is a slight risk for severe storms as we go through the afternoon and evening. In fact, it's probably those areas, especially toward the central portion of the state, closer to the Interstate 35 corridor, where we could see the storms develop. And then as they mature and move to the east, they will provide a somewhat higher risk for severe weather as we look ahead. So that is certainly something to watch out for. Why are we seeing this threat for severe storms? Well, all the ingredients are in place. Heat and humidity is a primary one that we're experiencing, and you can certainly feel it as you step outside. Temperatures in the upper 80s to low 90s at this hour, perhaps going a bit higher. Heat index readings around 100 or even higher for many areas along and south of Highway 30. As we look ahead, dew points ranging from the mid to upper 70s, even close to 80 in a few cases. That is very high levels of moisture in the atmosphere. That's going to help feed those storms, potentially fueling that risk for severe weather. In terms of individual severe weather threats, the highest risk is for damaging wind today. That is the potential for wind gusts that could exceed 60 miles per hour. And in some cases, there could be some wind gusts that exceed 80 miles per hour. Once you start to talk about 70 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts, that's when you talk about the potential for some more notable amounts of damage. Could cause some power outages, could cause trees to be blown over in some cases. That possibility is out there with storms, especially as they organize into that line that we're expecting to see moving from west to east. Large hail and tornadoes also a threat with storms today, although a little bit of a secondary one compared to the damaging wind risk, but we still want you to be aware of that possibility. And if a tornado warning is issued for your area, it's certainly to seek shelter as you need to. Heavy rain, otherwise a pretty decent shot with these storms too. There's just a ton of moisture, as you can feel as you step outside, and that is likely sticking with us as we go through the evening. In terms of the time frame for these storms, well, when they develop about 2 to 5 o'clock in our western and northwestern counties, you see the area here in the central portion of the viewing area, including Prairie du Chien down toward Manchester, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, and Washington, about 5 to 7 o'clock. And then closer to Dubuque, 6 to 7, probably a little bit toward the latter end of that, 7 to 9 o'clock in that zone that pushes into Illinois and Wisconsin, with most areas seeing the severe weather threat coming to an end by that point. And it's really going to be most likely a sort of one and done threat for severe storms. Once it moves through, the risk will be decreased after that due to a working over of the atmosphere. So that's the good news there. Right now in eastern Iowa and pretty much around the state, we are lacking in precipitation, pretty much lacking in cloud cover as well. In fact, we'll pan a little bit farther to the north to show you where we've seen a little bit of shower and storm activity so far today, but not a lot in terms of anything intense at this hour, which is good news. Now, as we head back toward the state and here in eastern Iowa, we've seen a lot of clearing since we've been through some scattered clouds earlier today as the satellite view pops in. That's really allowing things to heat up and really helping to set the stage for what should be potentially some particularly intense storms as we go through the afternoon and evening. So let's talk about timing. Here's the latest information we have from Pinpoint Futurecast. These storms still slated to develop between about 2 to 3 o'clock in this area. That really does encompass the western portion of the viewing area into this corridor near Interstate 35. A little bit of wiggle room north to south, but certainly that's the area we're watching for these storms to start to take off. And when they do, they will likely do so in a pretty big hurry. So after they develop, intensifying relatively quickly due to the amount of energy in the atmosphere. That initial stage has the best chance for some large hail as these storms form, and that hail threat diminishes a bit once they become organized into that line. That went through a little quickly, so let's actually go back and let's stop here at just 5 o'clock as these storms move from west to east. And you can see them affecting areas like Waterloo, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, as they continue their progress to the east at about probably 45 to 60 miles per hour, moving quickly. And so when a warning is issued for your area, make sure to take extra care to react quickly as they move in. Now, as we go towards 6 o'clock, storms continuing to affect primarily areas along and south of Highway 20. That's why the Storm Prediction Center has that area outlined with its highest risk of the day in terms of an enhanced risk for severe weather. And then closer to 7 o'clock, you see it start to push closer to the Mississippi River, but still severe storms possible along and south of Interstate 80 as these storms continue their progress off to the east and southeast. By 8 o'clock, storms approaching the Chicagoland area. If you have relatives out there, make sure that they are aware of the potential storms they could see later today. Here in eastern Iowa, the threat really quickly diminishing as we go through that time frame. As we get toward 9, 10, 11 o'clock, notice the only residual activity we may have left is just some scattered storms on the back edge of this, providing some more heavy rain, but the severe weather threat primarily diminishing at that point. Now, in terms of tomorrow, we're seeing things really quieting down. Storms will stay to our south, and then as we go through the day, the biggest threat for severe weather will be out of our area. Now, we can't rule out a few isolated showers or storms as we head through the afternoon, but the activity will be much less intense as we just won't have the same ingredients in place. And today, we've got them. We do have that wind shear, which is change in wind direction and speed with height. We have a good source of lift, both in the form of a cold front and a mid-level disturbance that's going to provide that upward motion in the atmosphere to have clouds build and eventually storms too. Plenty of instability, plenty of moisture. You'll feel it when you step outside. In fact, storm energy over the next several hours will be about as high as it gets on the chart here. And then it really drops off sharply once those storms move through. The storm's likely to use up a lot of that atmosphere as we go through the afternoon and evening hours and leave us with a much more stable atmosphere overnight. In terms of heavy rainfall, that potential is there with storms that will be taking place during the afternoon and evening hours. A risk for flash flooding could develop if you see more than one storm today. That's probably what's going to take in terms of seeing some of that heavier rainfall. And like we saw earlier on Pinpoint Futurecast, where some of those storms linger, especially south of Highway 30 this evening, that's where we could see that heavy rainfall potential and a little bit of flash flooding develop in a couple of cases. So if you live in a flood-prone area, be ready to react to that if that develops in your area. Rainfall totals probably ranging at least half an inch where storms move through. And again, where repeated storms move through or a little bit of training takes place, we're talking the potential for an inch, 2, maybe a little bit more out of this round of storms that's moving through. So we want to remind you, we've been through these a lot. Storms that have been moving through, we want to keep you informed of what to do if a storm moves through your area. Get to a safe place when a warning is issued. Head for the lowest floor of your home, an interior room. Stay away from windows, as we've learned in storms with damaging wind. Windows can be damaged, roofs can be damaged, which is why we say the lowest floor. Stay there until this threat has passed. If a tornado warning is issued in particular, cover yourself with blankets and pillows, perhaps a bike helmet, something else to keep your head and neck safe as those storms move through, and listen to official sources for updates and information. That includes us here at KCRG. We will encourage you, if you are found outside during these storms, to get inside. That's your best bet as storms pass by your area. Don't try to take refuge underneath an overpass. That is not necessarily a safe place to be, and it can cause more issues for folks behind you trying to get by on the road to a safe place. And if it's a tornado warning for an area that you are stuck and you don't have a other choice in terms of finding sturdy, substantial structures to seek shelter in, get as low as you can in a flat area or a ditch. Make sure to cover your head and neck from flying debris. You can use that with your arms or whatever you may have available to help keep yourself safe. So, in terms of the storms that we're going to see today, there's been a lot on social media about people talking about derechos today. In terms of what we can say ahead of time with storms, we can't really predict them in terms of that, yes, this is for sure going to be a derecho, this will happen. That meets a specific criteria in terms of how many wind reports across how long of a distance and how wide of a distance and how intense those winds get. So it's more of an after the fact classification of storms than it is necessarily a prediction. I've had a lot of folks asking, and for a good reason. A lot of folks still very sensitive to that word and that potential outcome based on the August 10th, 2020 storm that moved through a good portion of eastern Iowa, especially folks along Highway 30. I get it. Lived in Cedar Rapids. We were all affected, so we all understand certainly the sort of trigger that can be for folks. Not all derechos are created equal. Even if we were able to classify storms today as a derecho, the August 10th outcome is just about the top end of how those can play out in terms of their intensity. So that alone makes it not a likely outcome. super rare type of outcome in terms of having those ingredients come together just right in order to predict, or in order to cause that kind of very, very intense winds. Just a few weeks ago, we had a derecho move through eastern Iowa. If you'll recall those early morning storms with all of those tornado warnings along and south of Interstate 80, this was just a few weeks back, happening near daybreak or right around when people are going to work and school. That technically was a derecho, but think about the extent of the damage we saw there. It was not as intense as August 10th, not as intense as we've seen with other storms that became derechos here in eastern Iowa in years past. Think about Vinton in 2011, or Iowa City and Coralville in Washington in 1998 in June. Not all have those more intense outcomes, so even if that does happen, it's not necessarily something that's going to lead to that kind of damage. We just want you to be ready, and the best way to be ready is to know what to do when a warning is issued, and just head for shelter, stay safe. We'll get through it. That's the thing that we can promise you here. As long as you take those precautions, everything will be okay in order to protect yourself. Little thing to remember, perhaps, as we head toward the afternoon, throw your phone on its charger, just in case. If we see some damaging wind and a power outage, you want to be left in a position where you don't have the ability to access that. Obviously, it's very important. It's a very helpful tool in the case of those situations. Now, if you do lose power and you are without a way to tune into us on KCRG or some other way like that, you can, of course, get our severe weather coverage from the KCRG TV9 First Alert Weather app. You can get it at kcrg.com. You can sign up for Weather Call Next Gen, which will give you an extra tool in your tool belt to get those warnings and give you that heads up. Also, NOAA Weather Radio, of course, we always recommend, and we will be live streaming if we are in continuous severe weather coverage. That's on our smart TV apps, on Fire TV, the Apple TV devices, as well as Roku, as well as YouTube, as well as KCRG.com. Lots of options to be able to get that feed, as well as, of course, KCRG TV9. So that is what will keep you safe. Now, the good news. Always want to end on a good note here, at least in terms of our overall view. Things will be getting better. This is all because we're transitioning from this hot and humid weather to something that's going to be a lot more comfortable later this week. Dew points tomorrow, already seeing a little bit of an improvement, but still somewhat sticky for your Tuesday. It's Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday when dew points head for the 50s, and overnight lows, as a result, head for the 50s too. Daytime highs during that time frame, only in the 70s. Real good news as we wrap up the week. Something to look forward to there. Now, in terms of a recap of what we are facing today, severe weather threat, particularly higher along and south of Highway 20. That's where an enhanced risk for severe storms is in place. Damaging wind is the primary threat with these storms as they move through. Tornadoes and some large hail can't be ruled out, especially at the initial onset of these storms. Again, the highest risk in that area, within that orange shaded area, the highest threat today is that wind threat, with a secondary threat for large hail and some tornadoes embedded. Storm timing will be between about 2 to 5 o'clock in our western and northwestern counties as storms develop, organizing into a line that moves across the area, especially areas like Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, and Oskaloosa, Manchester, around 5 to 7 o'clock, 7 to 9 o'clock after that, as these storms pass through, and we can hopefully bring an end to that threat. As noted, not much going on early this afternoon, but that will be changing as we go through the day. Pinpoint Futurecast shows that change as we head between about 2 to 3 o'clock, and we see those storms start to develop in central Iowa. They'll quickly intensify as they do, and we see that threat for severe weather increase. Likely see potential for a watch issued during that time, and then warnings as the storms intensify. Here's 6 o'clock on Pinpoint Futurecast as they continue spreading to the east, and then by about 7 o'clock, pressing farther east than that and starting to move out of the TV9 viewing area. But we still carry that threat through at least mid-evening. It's overnight when that really does come to an end, and we will see these storms move out, and we will see much quieter weather for a while. So that's your update as of early afternoon on Monday, July 15th. We will, of course, bring you all the latest updates, all those opportunities to catch up with us, KCRG.com, KCRG TV9, KCRG TV9 First Alert Weather app. We'll be bringing the latest First Alert Storm team, always on your side, giving you that coverage that you expect, that you've grown to expect over the years. And of course, we will be here to fulfill that promise to you. Thanks for checking in on this update. And we'll hope that everyone has a great day. Hope that everyone stays safe.